Hello and welcome to The Horrible Idea, a podcast about horror movies. I'm Stephanie, and I think one of the things me and my co-host have in common is that neither of us can relate to the suburbs.
And who the hell does the landscaping in Haddonfield? I mean, raking up those leaves, that would be the real horror. And what are they paying in property taxes? That's what I want to know. I'm Jack.
Yeah, you didn't introduce yourself. That's okay. I think listeners know who we are by this point. This week we're talking about Halloween, right in time for Halloween. This movie was released October 25th, 1978, and it was directed and written by John Carpenter and his co-writer, Deborah Hill. She was also a producer.
And his girlfriend. The budget was around $325,000, and the box office was around 60 to 70 million. Pretty good. IMDb gives this 7.8 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes gives it a 96, and the audience gives it an 89. All around good marks. Yeah. Some interesting facts besides the fact that John Carpenter and Deborah Hill kind of were lovers while writing this. He also did the music, which is very iconic, and he was paid $10,000 for writing, directing, and scoring it. And he and his girlfriend wrote the script in 10 days. And it shows.
Yeah. So my fun fact about this was the scene where is it Loomis?
Yeah, Loomis.
Yeah, where Dr. Loomis is walking through the graveyard. The groundskeeper, graveyard worker guy, plays Toodles in Hook, which is one of my favorite childhood movies. I noticed his voice, and I was like, that sounds like Toodles from Hook. And I looked it up, and it was. I did not write down the actor's name, but that's okay. Anyway, it was a fun fact.
You know who's not in this film is Rufio.
Oh, he probably wasn't born yet. Or maybe he was just being born.
All right, preconceptions.
So I know of this as one of the big three of Freddy, Jason, and Michael. So I'm finally getting a hang of who's who. I knew the music. I knew the da-na-na-na-na-na. But I used to mix that up whether was Michael or anyway, I'm learning. And then I also I knew that there were multiple killers who hate horny people, and we'll get into that later, but my preconception of Freddy is that he loves horniness, but don't spoil anything. So
I will not. I definitely watched this a bunch as a kid, though watching it now, I did not remember any of it, except his basic Michael's outfit and sort of Jamie Lee Curtis's old but young look.
Yeah.
And the music. But I would say out of the three of these, I remember it the least. I definitely remember Nightmare on Elm Street the most, so we'll get into that. This one also made the least sense out of all of them.
There was a lot of weirdness. We'll get to that and why'd you do that? But yeah, same. I was a little confused at various points.
Yeah. So who was your favorite character?
Well, I really liked Lori. So Lori was my mom's name. And I like to think that she'd have been, resourceful and would, be the final girl, smarty pants. But also Jamie Lee Curtis, I know I've never seen this, but I knew she was in Halloween, and I've just seen her in so many other things. It's so interesting to see her so young, but her face has always been really interesting.
It is.
She's not stereotypically beautiful, but I think she's got a face that I want to watch on screen, which is what makes her a great movie star. But besides that, I really liked Dr. Loomis, who, I don't know, he just seemed like kind of a cool presence. He was a little weird, and I really thought, he was going to die, like, at every turn. I was, like, convinced he was going to die, but he doesn't, so.
Yeah, it was weird. The whole Dr. Loomis thing and the sheriff almost felt like a different movie than the kids. It was very, like, separate. But I also like Jamie Lee Curtis. My mother's name is Laura, so it's close. Yeah, she was good. She was I don't know if she was a good actress in this or everyone else was just horrible, but there was some questionable acting choices throughout this film.
Yes.
But besides Laurie, I liked Linda Vanderklonk because her name is Linda Vanderklonk. And she was totally my favorite character, totally.
Did you like when she was filing her nails in bed? That was gross.
There was a lot of gross making out in this whole film and just general weirdness. Annie also had really nice hair. I liked Annie. Annie's hair was probably my favorite character.
They all have nice hair. It's very like voluminous 70s hair.
Yeah. So let's sum up this plot. I guess it has a plot, sort of.
Yeah, it's on Halloween 1963, 8-year-old Michael Myers stabs his sister to death after seeing her making out with her boyfriend. He's put in a sanitarium where he stays silently for 15 years under the supervision of Dr. Loomis.
In 1978, he escapes and returns to his home in Haddonfield, Illinois, where he stalks a high school student, an all-around nerd named Laurie. He hunts and kills 2 of her friends and some others, focusing on people who he sees naked or being promiscuous. In the end, Laurie thwarts him and stabs him, but he seems to live uncaptured in the end.
Yeah. So, first things first, it's weird that he's, like, doesn't like horniness, but then he's so obsessed with Laurie because she seems like a real prude and like definitely not getting any.
Right.
So...
And I didn't get that either. And was it like he kind of wanted to kill her, but he needed to wait until she, I don't know.
Maybe he just like
hand job or something?
Thought she was cute or something. I don't know. He is the worst. Like, he has no stealth, which, like, I guess that's fine because he survives. But, like, he lets himself be seen everywhere. That very obvious station wagon is just everywhere.
with a decal on the side.
Like, he's not trying to hide. A scene of unintentional comedy was when Laurie and Annie are walking home after school, and he's like there in front of the hedge, and then he just kind of moves to the side.
Right.
I don't know. It was so awkward.
Also, that iconic scene where she looks out the window and he's standing by the laundry just made me laugh. I mean, there are a bunch of like memes about it, but just seeing it for real made me laugh.
Just the way that he kind of like appears is funny. I don't know why. So what were some of your favorite scenes in this?
One that sticks out is when Annie gets choked to death because it's so long and so weird. And then there's like slow motion sort of at one point, and then she kind of hits the car horn.
That was also like I was laughing during that as well because she's making the weirdest faces, and also I was like multiple times Michael resorts to choking, but I always thought of him as like a knife is like
knife guy.
Yeah, I mean he does use the knife too, but I don't know, whatever.
Right. I think a lot of these movies that have a lot of sequels, like some of the things that people buy, like happen later, and then sort of like the whole like Jason with the hockey mask.
He doesn't appear like, isn't it? He doesn't even wear the hockey mask until the third one.
Yeah,
I think he has like a bag at some point. Anyway, that was a weird scene. couple of my favorites. So I liked when they're smoking the weed in the car, Annie and Laurie. And I was like
Their
kind
big
of
yellow
surprised. Yeah, I was kind of surprised that Laurie was like getting high. She just seemed too like kind of goody two shoes for that. But I like that. Because then they pull up and like Annie's dad is a cop, and they pull up like 0.5 seconds after like putting out this joint and think that he's not going to smell it. And I mean, he seems to be kind of an idiot, so maybe he didn't, but and then one of my other favorite things is when Laurie's in class and she's looking out the window and she sees the station wagon. And so she's kind of daydreaming. And then the teacher calls on her and she gives like a perfectly eloquent, great answer to this question. And I'm like, man, if I had Laurie's brain, like...
Also, that seemed like a college level question that she was answering.
That's why I was like, oh, maybe she's in AP. But I was like, is she in college? I thought she was supposed to be in high school. I don't know.
She also looked and dressed like she was 40.
And she had the like hobbies of my grandmother. Like she was knitting and like just generally wearing like knits. Yeah.
A lot of layers.
Yes. And she like, but I mean, I was kind of into some of the fashion. I was actually even like kind of into Michael's little coveralls. I thought they were kind of cute.
He made it work, yeah.
Yeah.
It's an easy Halloween costume.
Yeah, right. And like that's actually interesting because I feel like that is a costume from several different things, just like coveralls. Like you could be someone from Alien, you could be like one of the crew members from The Expanse, you could be Michael. Like there's so many people who wear coveralls.
Can you do like Hannibal Lecter kind of thing?
Yeah.
So my kind of the most well-known piece of trivia is that mask he wears is actually a Star Trek Captain Kirk mask.
I have heard that, yeah.
Bill Shatner.
But didn't they like melt it or put paper mache on it or something?
Yeah, a little bit. They changed it.
Because it's a little warped, but yes, that's very funny.
Yeah. So jump scares, did you have any?
Not really. Michael moves very slowly. Like, he's just sort of, I mean, I guess, like, there were a couple times when he, like, appeared behind something where I'd kind of go, like, ooh. But not really. He just moves so slowly. And...
He did.
Like...
Kind of reminded me of Pepe Le Pew. You know, just kind of like...
Yikes.
Slowly but surely.
Oh, no. Yeah, so I didn't really have any. I mean, when he stabbed Laurie, I got kind of like, woo! And I definitely
He stabbed her shirt.
Yeah, but I thought he, like, stabbed her. So I was like...
Yeah.
And then, sorry, the one scene that really kind of creeped me out was when Dr. Loomis and Nurse Ratched, or whoever she was, were driving to the hospital, and there were all the like patients out milling about in the rain. But the scene that really freaked me out was when Michael like climbs on top of the station wagon and is like pulling her out like that. I had a few like there, but that's it.
Yeah.
What about you?
I didn't really have many, except strangely when Laurie was walking and like turned the corner and bumped into the creepy sheriff, who they then proceeded to have the creepiest interaction in the film, where he just kind of like stared at her and he's like, "Yeah, how you doing?"
Yeah. Ew.
There's all these points where Michael is like standing somewhere and then he disappears, and I think Saturday Night Live did this once, where they just showed all those scenes that you don't see, where he's like scrambling and like running and like jumping over a fence and, and then just like standing perfectly still again. He's
like a lumbering presence sometimes, but then is very like nimble at others.
No, yeah, he's doing parkour
Yeah.
between takes.
Or he's just built trapdoors in everywhere or something. I don't know. I think next we'll do our weekly segment, Why'd You Do That?
Is anybody home?
Why did you do that? I'll be right back.
Where we ask a few questions of the protagonist or the villain or just really anyone in these movies, because a lot of times
scriptwriter.
a lot of times they act foolish. So what's your first one?
So we already got into this a little bit, but why does Laurie look and dress like she's 40? She simultaneously looks so young and so not old, but like mature at the same time. It's weird.
Yeah, I mean, she definitely, like I said, she has like granny habits as well. But I guess it's supposed to mean that she's like serious and studious or something.
I bet she wears really big underwear. I'm just going to put that out there.
Well, yeah, under her extremely high-waisted jeans. She probably has high-waist undies as well. So
what's your first?
Mine is, so I was a latchkey kid. After school, I just kind of did whatever until dinner time. But these babysitters or teens just seem to sort of like interchangeably drop kids off wherever, and I don't know, like, I guess maybe the parents just aren't going to notice, or because Annie's like, yeah, I'm leaving the kid here and I'm just going to go hang out with Paul, and it all seems like very normal. I don't know.
Well, so I may have mentioned this on the podcast before, but I grew up in Queens, and it was sort of like that. Like, people had babysitters, and you would just go over people's houses, and you would just parents would just need to do something and be like, "Hey, I'm leaving my kid here for an hour."
No, and I get that part.
Like that.
I get that part, but I guess if my sister was my babysitter, but like which means I didn't have one. But if I had if my parents had paid for a babysitter and they came home and no one was there, they would have been mad. Like, why did we pay you if you left? But no, I mean, yeah, I would just kind of go off and ride my bike and do whatever. I mean, part of it is that I grew up in the country, in a rural area. So most of my friends lived like a 30-minute drive away. So, but yeah, it just seemed strange to me. I don't know.
Yeah, my next one we sort of went over, but they're looking for this guy. He's in the most recognizable car in town that has a giant decal on the side that says like Illinois government. Like how and literally it would just pass behind the sheriff every 10 minutes. I have some real problems with the infrastructure of this town and the way.
Yeah. Well, they did have that completely inept cop kind of running things, so
he's the sheriff.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't seem like he was very on the ball, but yes, it was a very like notable vehicle to the extent that Laurie like just notes it while she's in class, and yet no one else does.
Huh.
Yeah. So my number 2 was like a really creepy moment for me. So Linda and Bob are like in the van, they're pulling up to the house, and Linda's like, I'm gonna rip your clothes off, and then Bob's like, well, I'm gonna rip your clothes off, and then he says, and then Lindsay. Now Lindsay, I'm pretty sure, is that 9-year-old girl, and it was a
I don't
joke,
remember this moment,
but it was weird. For a second I was like, is Lindsay, I thought maybe that was Annie, because I have a hard time following names. But I was like, no, that's Annie. And Annie keeps calling the name Lindsay. That's that little girl, who incidentally is played by Kyle Richards of Real Housewives fame, which is weird. But anyway, yeah, that was kind of weird. I was like, okay, so Bob is a pedophile.
I didn't get that, but okay. That is a why.
I'm pretty sure that's what happened.
Why'd you do that? So my last why is, why does Michael kill his sister? I mean, because she was horny, but it was never really explained in any way. So I really don't understand why he did anything. Why did he do any of these things? And yeah, they were just a lot of the way it was abruptly like, he kills his sister and then it's 15 years later. And then we never like get any time with him in the sanitarium. It's just like he killed his sister. It's 15 years later and he escapes. It's just like one after the other.
I think that was supposed to denote that he was just like a troubled kid, like kind of who had latent psychopathy or something. That I don't know.
Black evil eyes.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean that was just the origin of him hating horniness. Like I feel like at least in Friday the 13th we got that like, okay, Jason drowned because the counselors were fucking while he was swimming. And so, like, okay, he's got a origin story for why he hates horny camp counselors. But Michael doesn't seem to have anything like that. So, yeah, I agree with you here. So my number 3 is who lives in what friggin' house? Now, they all are just, like, suburban kind of homes, but I was like... So the house that Bob and Linda go to is Lindsay's house?
Yeah.
I was like, is Linda Lindsay's sister? Why are they going to this house?
No. They went there because Lori was watching Lindsay.
Well, Annie was.
Lori was
yeah.
watching the boy. Yeah.
And
I don't know.
But then they're just
I don't really
super
care.
casual in the bed with beer cans all over the floor, just like getting down. Clearly like Lindsay's parents' bed. Not at all concerned that Lindsay's parents could come home.
Well, that's just teenagers.
I don't know, man. I had like never went to not even my friend's parents, like some kid's parents' house and like got down in their parents' bed and like had no care to like, I don't know, be ready to like run away at any given moment. Like, I don't know. It seemed really wild to me. But it was,
Right.
I had a hard time keeping track of whose house was whose. And, anyway.
Can I add one of my famous Jack childhood trauma stories that everyone
boy.
loves? But is, I think, apropos to this. So I was at the girl across the street who was like my somewhat girlfriend. This is like maybe early high school, and we're up in a room, making out. And then her dad comes home, and he was a very large, scary man. He had these huge arms that were covered with white hair, and he had like old man strength. So I was very scared of him. So what I did was climb out her window and sit on her roof for 5 hours until they went to bed.
Oh boy.
That's what kids did.
No, but that was her house. Like, if
Right.
they had gone to Linda's house, I would have been like, okay, yeah, get it. Like, but because Bob could have hid and she could have just been like, haha, I just wanted to like hang out in your bed, parents. But I don't know. And she's just like filing her nails in the bed and not a care in the world. But also, I just looked it up. Bob really does say ripping Lindsay's clothes off. And a lot of people have noted online, like, what the hell? That's very weird.
You know what that sounds like? It sounds like a flub in the script, but...
Or just like he's supposed to have a dark sense of humor or something. I don't know. But I was like, Bob, your character's not developed enough to have this be your first line. Like, I don't know.
Right.
Anyway,
so let's get into your 6 degrees of cinema.
So a peek behind the curtain. I've decided to start keeping these secret from you until I say them on the pod so that I could get a really genuine reaction. So 6 degrees of cinema. I actually did it in 5 this week. So Jamie Lee Curtis was in True Lies with Arnold, which, next one, he was in Conan with Sundal Bergman, who was in Hell Comes to Frogtown, I think a mutual, if not fave, curiosity. And Hell Comes to Frogtown, everyone just watch it. It's so good. I think you can find it on YouTube. It's so ridiculous. It's one of the most ridiculous movies I've ever seen. So Hell Comes to Frogtown stars Rowdy Roddy Piper, who was also in They Live, which was directed by John Carpenter. So there we go. I could have added a sixth one, but these movies were such a perfect, collection.
Don't gild the lily.
So, Jack, what is your pitch of the week?
All right. So in numerous scenes, Dr. Loomis just talks about how Michael Myers is evil and he's just, an unrepentant murderer, but also says that he, in 15 years, has never spoken. So what this, I guess, I'm thinking like a short BBC or Netflix series would just be a silent child sitting in a seat with Dr. Loomis asking him questions and not getting any response for hours and hours on end. And then him going home and then just like elaborately constructing this entire psychological profile based on nothing but empty stares. That's my first pitch.
That's a very like esoteric kind of, that would have to be on like the IFC channel or something.
Sure. The other is just, there was some things I read that this was sort of based on another movie called Black Christmas, and they pretty much went to John Carpenter, and he had an idea for a movie, but they were like, yes, but can it be Halloween? And he was like, sure, whatever. Yeah. He's like, if you give me $10,000, it could be whatever you want, because my girlfriend and I are going to write this in 10 days, and there may or may not be cocaine involved.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. But I think they should have just kept going and did Easter, Passover, Ramadan, Arbor Day, Bisexual Visibility Day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as anyone who has watched the Staircase documentary knows, bisexuals are prone to violence. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially bisexual
that's...
owls.
Oh, yeah. Well, hashtag the owl did it, for sure.
So we are going to do the third in the Holy Trilogy of slashers soon. So I don't want to compare and contrast this with Friday the 13th, but we have watched a bunch of 70s movies. And, where does this fit in sort of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, weird hippies traveling through rural Texas, a little bit Friday the 13th, but just that aspect of it. Like, this is another in a long line of 70s horror. Where do these kids sit?
Well, so something interesting. I think that maybe I'm just less afraid of 70s horror, or at least the 70s horror we've watched so far, because I've not really gotten too scared by any of these. Maybe it's just like the effects or whatever, but I would say these kids are dumber than, well, it's hard to say. They're all kind of dumb. I was going to say dumb. The Friday the 13th kids are pretty dumb, and they're all pretty bad. I don't know. I would say just by nature of having Lori in the crew, they're a little smarter.
Yeah.
But because I think she's a little more together than like Sally from Texas Chainsaw. I mean, Sally just kind of slowly runs and screams. But, so I would say she's a little more with it. And I just love Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah, and she's a little bit more of like what I think of a final girl. There's a little like more of that sort of like she stands out from the rest of her friends in a different way than Sally did, or whatever her name was in Friday the 13th. And
Yeah, I have no idea.
they were also a little more, this is like late 70s, so they were kind of 80s-ish, like kind of had that little Valley Girl totally thing going on.
Yes. I think that, like, for me, like, even Poltergeist, was that 1980? I think that is, like, just past this. It's even starting to get into the, like, feathered hair kind of mode.
Right.
But,
And Friday the 13th,
I don't know. I think this one was probably the least scary of Friday the 13th and Texas Chainsaw. Just because Michael moves so slow.
Yeah, and so Nightmare on Elm Street is 84. So, and it definitely, not giving anything away, but Nightmare on Elm Street feels like it's in a totally different era than these do.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm expecting to be far more scared of that than I was of this.
I mean,
We'll see.
So, all right, let's get into final thoughts with this, because I have a few.
Yeah, so this wasn't really scary at all. And it's funny because, like, I think, something like The Conjuring or The Babadook, which we've done, have, like, really gotten some big jumps out of me. And, like, even given me a little bit of the creepies when I'm just, like, around my apartment alone. But this and, like, some of the other 70s slashers, like, even though, like, I just have a natural fear of lumbering men, I just haven't found them that scary. So, I mean, Michael's slow, and he's not as effective or prolific as someone like Mrs. Voorhees or even Leatherface. I thought it was, like, a good movie. So, but I'm only giving it a 6 out of 10 for the entertainment factor, but not because I dislike it, just because it was, like, kind of slow, and it was nice to look at. Like, I think it was shot well, and some of the, like, lighting is great, but I don't know, I kind of kept waiting for stuff to happen, and, like, Michael doesn't even, like, come into true contact with Laurie, I think, till like 7 minutes before the end. So, and then for scare factor, 3 out of 10. It just didn't really scare me very much. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, out of all the movies we watched so far, I feel like I could take Michael, or at least like someone could, like,
He moves extremely slow.
He does.
I can't even run very fast, but I could run away from him.
And I think at some point in the series, there are some like supernatural things imbued in him. But in this one,
Sure.
He's just like a crazy guy who's like 30. And yeah, it doesn't seem very scary to me. It was less enjoyable than I remembered. There were some like, it was very inconsistent in the shooting, because a good portion of it was really sort of very boring, sort of regular shots. And then occasionally there'd be a really interesting shot of like her in her room at one point where it zooms out just in time to show the phone call. And then, just some like outdoor shots with Michael. They're like very artistic and interesting. But then a good deal of the movie makes very little sense and doesn't really have any like forward momentum at all. And like the other ones, there's no real sort of mythology. I mean, I guess, everyone in town knew he killed his sister, and that was sort of like this thing, but he wasn't built up to be like a, that character from To Kill a Mockingbird.
Well, it didn't. Yeah, it didn't really. Boo Radley. It didn't really have it didn't really have the same sort of. You don't get the origin story like you do in Friday the 13th. Like,
Right.
that is a very clear, easy to understand origin story of, like, the killer / the killer's mom, whatever. And the little I know of Nightmare on Elm Street, that Freddy has sort of a fucked up origin.
Freddy has a very complicated origin that is way beyond all these.
But like beyond just being like a little kid who kills his sister for kind of inexplicable reasons. But yeah. And I know, we've been comparing this to Friday the 13th, and I think we'll continue to compare once we get to Freddy, but they really stand out to me, even as someone who had never watched any of these movies, as kind of like the big three slasher people.
Yeah. And then there was the music, which I thought was cool, but then like at some point it started getting very grating of that like constant, not even like the da 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 da, but there was this backbeat that was just like this really annoying sort of metronomic thing. Right. So scare factor, I gave it a 2 out of 10. And entertainment factor, I gave it a 5 out of 10. And from what I remember, it gets better. Like some of the other ones get a little more into the mythology. And then, she comes back for H2O 20 years later.
I was going to say, that's the name I know, is that there's H2O. And then didn't she do one just like a couple years ago too? Like 2018 or something?
Yeah, no, she's done, I think, 3 or 4. I think she's done like one every decade, but
right, just checks in.
Right, and then there's Rob Zombie did a remake, which I haven't seen, but now I'm sort of curious about it now.
Yeah, maybe we'll cover it on the pod.
Well, what's coming up next?
Next week, we're going to be completing the Triumvirate of Terror with Nightmare on Elm Street. And I think we're going to have some fun Freddy, Michael, Jason bits. So just a heads up, send us your fuck, marry, kill of these three. We're going to give ours next week. I'm very excited to hear what you have to say on this. And follow us on Instagram at The Horrible Idea. We're on Twitter at HorriblePod. Give us a rate and review on Apple Podcasts. We're also on Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you listen. Don't be scared.
And if you have any interesting facts about Nightmare on Elm Street or the Big Three, or if you think we're giving Chucky short shrift here and we should include him, or the Leprechaun in the Hood, let us know. You can add us at Twitter or email us at thehorribleidea@gmail.com. And as Michael said,